Welcome, everyone, to Drive to Win. I'm Justin Bell. I'm here at the Wynn Las Vegas. And, of course, the show is presented by Mobil 1 for the love of driving. Well, it is a weekend off. A weekend off in Formula One terms is always a relative thing, I guess, because coming off the back of, such an intense series of races in the second half of the calendar, there's a shift, isn't there, in where people are and which teams are doing well. McLaren right up there, Mercedes fighting each other. I mean, some crazy stuff. But while the drivers might take off, and as you can see on their social media, having a pretty good time, the teams naturally are doing what they do, and that is hundreds of men and women working very intently to bring their best game for not just themselves, their departments, the drivers, the sponsors. Everybody has to have a good showing going into these last 5 races. But it is, as I said on the last show, it is the big swing to the Americas, and everybody is excited about that. I mean, race in Mexico, we've got Brazil, we've got the 2 in America. I mean, really, really great stuff. But of course, before we get to talk about the next race, which is at Austin, I have a fantastic guest for you. I thought he was exactly the right guy to bring on for this sort of little break between as they shift continents. But remember, it's all getting a bit racy here in Las Vegas. We are right on the cusp now. I can't believe I'm saying it. It's just a few weeks away before the Heineken Silver Grand Prix here in Las Vegas, and the strip is transforming. Talking with Jeremiah, my producer just now, you can really see what's going on. I mean, they've got everything outside the Bellagio, these incredible corporate hospitalities going up. You see that lighting gantry going all the way down the strip. It's here. You can see it taking shape. And judging by the amount of conference calls I've had about activations and everything that's going on, it's really here. But it's here at the Wynn in the biggest way. It is the place that you can access from the outside. It isn't going to be landlocked like so many of the other properties on the strip. You will be able to get into the Wynn from the backside, and then the racetrack is on the front side. So it's quite remarkable. And remember, there are many ways you can get involved and be here. I think people are starting to realize that 3 months ago, when they first went and looked at the prices of coming to watch the Las Vegas Grand Prix, they're like, oh my God, I'd rather sit at home and watch TV. Now they're getting closer to the event and realizing how cool it's going to be. It's like Monaco, Montreal, everything all wrapped into one. People are going, yeah, I should be here. And if you go to the website, winlasvegas.com/experiences/F1, you'll see there's still some pretty cool ways for you to be here. So packages for every level. So enjoy it. Well, let's talk about our guest, Jeff Zwart. He is an American commercial film director, racer, photographer, cameraman, and author. But when I say that, I need to add some gravitas to that. When I say commercials, I mean Super Bowl commercials. When I say racer, I mean multiple winner of the world's toughest hill climb, the Pikes Peak hill climb. When I say photographer, he's created images that have defined the brands of Porsche, like Porsche, over the past few decades. When I say cameraman, he's so good that it's almost tough to work for him, because everything he asks you to do, he can actually do better. And he's also an author. Just add that in there. So he's one of my heroes, definitely a guy I look up to. And if I could come back in the next life, or even maybe improve on this one, there's a lot to learn from Jeff Zwart. Jeff, I really, really am pleased to have you on the show. It's a real honor, my friend.
Yep. Thanks. Good to be here. It's good.
And you're back in Colorado. I'm sure the rigors of Rennsport Reunion 7 are not that distant memories right now.
Not really, but that was a great combination of cars and, all the driving heroes along the way, and just so fun to see everybody in one place and see so many drivers reunited with their cars, and, to be sitting at a table with Terry Bootson and Danny Sullivan, both driving 962s. And that was like the first time they'd probably done it in I don't know how many years. So it's really cool.
Yeah, which kind of is why I really wanted to get you on the show, because I realized, well, I always realize you have got these moments, you've had snapshots on more than snapshots, windows into these incredible eras of our sport, and your career has led you to really have greater visibility than nearly anyone else I know. But today I wanted to talk about Formula One. When did your Formula One journey start? How did Road and Track send you to your first Formula One race as a young American?
Well, maybe even to step back from that a little bit is that, in 1964, my parents took me to the first Indy 500 that I went to, the first big motor race. And
Mm.
I decided at that event that I liked the sound of one person's car, and that was Jimmy Clark. And he was driving something other than an Offenhauser. And this Lotus was flashing around, the speedway in a different way than the front engine Offenhauser cars were. And I started at that young age of 9 years old to kind of figure out what sort of racing he did. And that was Formula One. And then when you kind of fast forward to me graduating from Art Center College of Design, my highest aspiration was to do something for Road and Track magazine along the way. And I was given a cover story, and they realized that I had a deep desire also to be around Formula One. So next thing I knew, I was kind of traveling around with Innes Ireland, who was quite a character, and going to Rio de Janeiro and shooting the Formula One spotters guide for Road and Track. And, that era was so special, and it continues to be special. But like you say, those windows into different moments of Formula One, and it's changed so greatly, but yet the roots and the passion and the driving dynamic and everything that went on in those days has just been kind of reincarnated today. But Formula One for me, even when I bicycled through Europe at 17 years old, I went to the Dutch Grand Prix and, snuck into the pits in the paddock area and was down at eye level with Niki Lauda and James Hunt and Clay Regazzoni, and those images and capturing those moments up close as literally a kid attending a Formula One race with no real, assignment from a magazine or anything, but I had that desire to be in the middle of it and be as close to it as possible.
What a great story. But also, I was just struck by how many of your friends would have been Formula what? Right? I mean, because it was now everyone's like, oh, Formula One. But back then, as an American kid, you were pretty hardcore if you knew about Formula One.
Yeah, and it really was Jimmy Clark. It was that desire to know about more about his world, because I was so attached to the sound of his car and the visual of his car at the Indy 500. And then I went to the Times Grand Prix with my dad to the Can-Am race, and it was such a different time, and those drivers drove all different kinds of series at the time too. So Jimmy Clark was not only running in Formula Two, Formula One, and also Can-Am. He was in the line at the snack bar at Riverside Raceway, a few people ahead of me, and I remember, asking my dad for the program, and I pulled it out to get him to sign that program in line, because I just thought he was my true hero at that time.
Well, you just actually said it all without saying it. It's access. You had access
Yeah.
that extended to everybody who touched Formula One at that point of view, whether it was those amazing images, taken by Jesse or whoever standing on the inside of a corner as Fangio's sideways coming past inches away. That's obviously where your career went, but it all started with being able to stand behind Jimmy Clark and have, in a snack line. There was a different type of access. Talk about that, because it's almost, we're struggling to get our F1 credentials right now to go to our own race here in Las Vegas. At the same time, back then, I want to go to a Formula One race, and you got in.
Yeah.
Talk about that access.
Yeah, things became more formal along the way for me, but certainly going to the Dutch Grand Prix, which was the first Formula One race I did, I literally rode there on my bicycle and showed up and got access to wherever I could go with sneaking into places and being there with a little 35 millimeter film camera shooting black and white film. But later on, I got assignments both from Road and Track magazine and from also On Track magazine, which was another publication that was going on at the same time, and ultimately Racer magazine. But, early on being in Southern California, we got the Long Beach Grand Prix, and the Long Beach Grand Prix was an F1 race. And, I was thinking a little bit the other day of, imagine this, is that Hans Stuck was driving in the Long Beach Grand Prix. And I had a deal with Canon cameras that had given me a whole bunch of different cameras. And they gave me a small 35 millimeter camera that I could trigger remotely or on an intervalometer. And I built this helmet, which was just like a Simpson helmet with two cameras on either side of the helmet. So it was balanced and two different lenses. And I walked around the paddock asking the drivers if somebody would wear this helmet for a lap, during practice.
Mm.
And literally it was an aluminum cage on either side of this and two, quite heavy 35 millimeter cameras. And Hans Stuck said, sure, I'll wear it. And he jokingly said to me, do I get to keep the cameras? And I was a little bit aghast because they were like the only cameras I had. But, we arranged a deal, and he drove a lap at the Long Beach Grand Prix with this wacky looking orange helmet, not even matching his own helmet. Who knows what size it was, and two big 35 millimeter cameras on either side of it. Can you imagine doing that today? It just would be unheard of. And, those were the wild times that I was able to kind of get through in those days of the early F1 days at Long Beach Grand Prix.
I mean, think how you did that, and it's a bit like watching whether you're watching the making of Grand Prix with James Garner or Steve McQueen, Le Mans, the size of the equipment, bolted onto the cars. Dad did in-car 956, but with a full-blown, cinema camera now we can do it with these little baby things. And there was a shot that came up yesterday, Jeff, on Instagram. I should have sent it to you unless you saw it. One of the photographers had a wonderful shot. He put his 35 millimeter inside someone's helmet and put it in the seat, obviously at all the right angles, just to show what you could see. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful shot. And you go, okay, it's not reinventing the wheel, but technology allows us to keep evolving. And I mean, I had this thought on Sunday watching the in-car video from the helmet. And I thought, what I would give to watch Senna from that view, right? I mean, or Michael Schumacher. We never will, but wow, the technology must excite you to see the bird's eye views we can get now.
It really does. And I think that photo you're referring to, I think it was Jamie Price or one of the great current F1 photographers. And it really was. And the thing that was cool too, it was kind of shot in the twilight, like, evening before you're on the grid, and, that whole point of view. And it's funny because I have, my point of view in my own filmmaking was always to give people a first person view of what it was like to race, what it was like to drive to the edge. And, that's been my point of view I come from a racer point of view into my filmmaking. So naturally, I want to share with people what it's like to take a car to the edge, what the view is like, what the feeling is like, so that it's not just an observer, but more of a participant point of view. And those kind of things, like you talk about, is that, I even in art center, which I graduated in 79 from art center, I was mounting cameras on boats and, unlimited hydroplanes and formula cars and as many places as possible. But, what we're able to do, as we went into the GoPro era, and now we're even into a smaller, more miniature era of filmmaking. But the things we would have to do, I did a lot of filming for CART at the time, and I wanted to give that point of view of what it was like, not just looking from your point of view in the car, but looking through the helmet, through the visor, all that sort of thing. And I remember working with Adrian Fernandez, and Adrian, we cut a helmet, one of his helmets that we had gotten from his manufacturer, cut it in half and put the camera inside because it couldn't even begin to even fit inside the camera, inside the helmet. And that point of view, and, here, this whole rig happened with a half a helmet ahead of him so that he could flip down his visor in front of the camera lens as he drove out of the pits. And, all those things we had to go through, which now can be contained in the smallest little tiny cameras. And I think it really has become a very exciting era of truly getting to see what these drivers get to feel and sense, not just the point of view, but the vibrations and the flaring and all this kind of stuff that goes on in their through their vision through the visor of a helmet. It's not a passive sport, and the
No.
more we can get inside it, the more intense it becomes.
Yeah, not a passive sort. So it's incredible, and you can hear in the booth sometimes they're like, "Oh God, I've never," Formula One media come up with a new camera angle, and you go, "God, I've never seen that before." Let's move into today's Formula One era. You perhaps more than anyone can understand, having been through sometimes the wasteland it felt like of being and a Formula One supporter here in America, right? When we had sort of felt like decades of pretty boring racing at time. It was never decades, but it seemed to, races that you could go to sleep in. What, in your words, has been the power of Drive to Survive? That as a storyteller, I'm hoping that you look at it like I do, as something extraordinary from your point of view.
Yeah, I think Drive to Survive has pulled back the curtain on a sport that was pretty controlled, and I think it developed the personalities, and that's what was great is suddenly we had the personalities. And Drive to Survive was really about the back markers in the beginning and how they can try to elevate themselves and move themselves forward, and it became so popular that all the teams eventually really kind of wanted to be involved at some level. Obviously, access is different per team, but it's really fascinating, and it developed these personalities, and you realize that there's a human soul, a human personality, a a real tangible person underneath those helmets and behind the headsets on the pit wall. And it kind of elevated not just drivers, but elevated the whole team. And the pressure of the front wheelman, or the pressure of the making those calls from a strategy
Mm.
standpoint, and then the background of the pressure of pulling sponsors and losing sponsors and all these things that I love it, because it's so easy to say that this is a sport that you push down with your right foot and you turn the wheel left and right, and this is what you do, and you just do that better than somebody else. It's so complex and so difficult, and every level of it is key to the other points moving forward and
Mm.
gelling as a team. And you look at Red Bull and you look at Haas and you look at these teams that are so different on the way they land on the grid, and you realize that all of the elements that they have to control are common to them, but how they control them and the ease in which some things happen for some teams where that's a struggle in another. This is what really develops the personalities. And it's emotional suddenly. It's not just watching cars go around a track. And I think, my own kids, I can say, are they when we sit down at the dinner table sometimes when we all get together, they know more about the background of a lot of these races and teams than I do, because they're so into it now. And I love it that it's just elevated it in such a tangible way. It peels back the curtain and lets us understand so many different levels. And us as individuals out in the real world, some of us deal with commerce, some of us deal with kind of business in different ways, or all these things. And I think that you realize that a Formula One team has so many elements to it, so many pieces that you can actually understand as a person in your own field. And I think that's the breakdown of it's really allowed us to be attached on so many different levels. It's not just motor oils and rubber and engines and drivers, it's so many other things.
Yeah. The economics of Formula One, each is so gargantuan. The ecosystem, they're all like countries joining, a United Nations. Each one, the thousands of people that work for it, the sponsors, the demands, the marketing. I've got to say, it not just Drive to Survive, but doing the show, but it's opened up, the business side of it, even to me, who's been pretty aware of it. And you work with brands so much. You understand, as you said, the business behind the face almost. 3 races here in America, bring it up to speed right now. We got Austin, and then we got Las Vegas. Unheard of when you were that little boy, coming to the Long Beach Grand Prix. What a what is the economic impact do you feel, and the sporting impact of having Formula One have 3 races here in the States?
I was even thinking about in my first days of covering Formula One for Road and Track magazine, I would shoot the race. It would be 2 months before the race would come out in the magazine. And, you think about that. And I would shoot the Formula One Spotter's Guide at Rio de Janeiro, the first race, the Brazilian Grand Prix. And my job was to shoot a portrait of every driver, the engine in every car, and the car on the track, every car. And, that was the spotter's guide, but that wouldn't come out for months once the Formula One season had started. And I think, now today it's so immediate, and the brand level of communication can integrate so much in not just the country it's in, but work globally. And I think Drive to Survive is obviously something that has motivated the awareness of it. But, I did the Red Bull cross country trip with, Max and Daniel, and we started in San Francisco and went across the United States. But you look at every team almost has different levels of integration of storytelling throughout the year, and I love that it's so the awareness is so high. It used to be, as you know, Justin, when we'd get off the plane in Europe, and the first thing we'd be hit with is our big lighted banners in the airport of something Formula One related. And we just didn't have that in the United States. And to have 3 races here now, and races that are really bringing it to the public, COTA is obviously an important one. And it was the one that really kind of motivated F1 to buy into coming back to the US, but dropping into Miami, really placing it in front of that whole culture there. And then a kind of a globally recognized city like Las Vegas and put it down there. Because remember that Formula One came to Las Vegas and it ran around a parking lot, and it was really a non-event when it was there before. And here it's running down the strip. It's in the middle of things. It's really, whether you want to be drawn to it or not, it will be there in your face. And then the eyes of the world, because of the interest in Formula One, all of a sudden comes to Las Vegas through that. And you talk to the drivers, and the drivers are genuinely excited about being there. And I
Yeah.
think that this is also the fun part, is seeing the excitement internally of coming to a place like Las Vegas.
Yeah. Well said. Well, you mentioned your road trip with Max. I'm not sure that would happen now. But he but I'm always intrigued. You had someone like Max. You saw him as he was approaching his, just unfolding his wings of greatness, really. Uh, what did you get to learn about him that you can see in the man now that's winning, his 3rd championship?
Well, we should maybe do a full disclosure here.
Yeah.
Max was on camera at the factory in England, but the rest of it was kind of done by his stand-in in there.
Uh,
So, the one-on-one Max side of things, I really didn't have that
mm,
to it. But I think that the idea that Red Bull would, in that at that point when we did that film, it was about where would Formula One stop in the United States. So it became pit stop oriented for the whole film, and that's why we did pit stops on the Oakland Bay Bridge and in Monument Valley and in Las Vegas. And the funny part is that we kind of only knew tidbits that there was a possibility of it coming to Florida, possibility of it coming to Las Vegas. And so ultimately our road trip went through all of those cities and there. And now we're sitting here with a great moment that the cars are actually racing and being in these 2 cities that we depicted in that film. So that was special. But I will say it's really interesting because you're working with the test team people, the people that are on working behind the scenes all the time for Formula One. And in Red Bull's case, it was so professional. Every shot we did. When we went to San Francisco to race through the downtown San Francisco, we walked every section that we were filming on to make sure that the manhole covers were all the right height. There weren't any dips that were going to be marginal in terms of the car itself. And we would identify the bumps when we drove over Independence Pass, not far from where I live here in Colorado. Again, we identified every bump in the road, everything. And the professionalism of once that car started and into the shot was something I had not really ever encountered in my filming. It was a new level of kind of preciseness and precision. And we spent a good amount of time getting that car from San Francisco clear to Miami. So it was definitely an eye opener of working back with the Formula One teams.
Yeah. Wow. And watching him take the championship on Saturday was, well deserved, wasn't it? He's been brilliant. He's been extraordinary, and setting records with a maturity. I mean, I'm a big fan, and I think he well deserved it.
I totally agree, and I think that the commitment and the realization of just the absolute dedication to what he is doing is something that we can kind of start to appreciate. Just watching the drivers get out of the car last weekend, they were the most physically exhausted I've seen them, at least in my recent watching of Formula One. It was truly a brutal race on them, and they could barely walk. And the feeling was they'd really done something that was
really done something
physically demanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before we let you go, a little bit of fun. It is now time for the Mobil One pit stop for the love of driving. Jeff, I'm going to ask you just a few fun little questions. Which current Formula One driver would you like see take on Pikes Peak?
Oh, geez, that's an interesting one. I would love, you know, uh, I have been around Lewis Hamilton multiple times in different events from Race of Champion and early on with him, and I just think that it would really be fun to sit there and watch him analyze and go after a place like that. I think that also I think that he really enjoys new challenges and new things to kind of do. So I think that some of the drivers would be so dedicated to F1 that they wouldn't consider it. So maybe if Lewis could join us at Pikes Peak, that'd be pretty fun.
Pretty cool. So would Raikkonen, I think. That would be good.
Yeah, but yeah.
What were you going to say? Sorry.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, he would be
No,
good.
that would be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your favorite driver to photograph when you were actually going to the races in Formula One?
Well, I was in an era of Senna, and Senna was one of those people that when you got down on your knees next to the car and focused the lens on his eyes in that little slit of a helmet, you know, you realized, and it kind of still makes my hair stand up on my arm of just that you realize he was in a zone, he was in a world. And when your lens, because we were manually focusing, and you pull that focus on that lens just to his eyes, you would realize I'm looking into somebody's world right there. And that was something very special. And I saw something in his eyes that I didn't see in a lot of other drivers.
Most dangerous shot you ever took? And you've done it all.
Oh my. Oh, that's a tricky one. There's been a few close calls, and your dad would actually tell you a funny story about myself and him at the A1 ring at the time in Austria. But I think there are moments, certainly during the F1 race, we were always left to be kind of in areas where there were a lot of photographers. But when we did have chances to control the sequence, and I worked a lot with the Williams Formula One team on the Hewlett Packard for a while there, and we did a great film with them once that was about the computers could kind of run the cars and all. And I think that, we would do a helicopter shot of chasing the Formula One cars around Silverstone and be as low as possible to it. And I just remember that the drivers, when they got out of the car, could feel the prop wash from the helicopter as we would fly over them, filming them. And I remember just thinking, okay, well, if they're feeling our prop wash and we're flat out in the helicopter, they're flat out in the cars, this is probably something we don't need to combine too much.
Great point. I see a lot of pictures of them, but your best car for a road trip?
Best car road trip?
Yeah, best car for a road trip.
Oh, best car for a road trip. I guess I love these days a car that takes you back to an era of time where it just becomes timeless. I kind of describe things as cars, modern cars will allow you to drive as fast as you want, have the temperature as cool as you want, the music as loud as you want. It can stop as fast as you want. All these things do that. And I love when you get an old car, it actually dictates your pace. And suddenly you're there with your arm on the edge of the window and things are quieter, there's no radio, it's just the motor purring along. And I think you've probably seen it, but I put a canoe on a 1953 Porsche and a big furry Bernese Mountain Dog in the back, and I go up canoeing for the day on a lake somewhere here in Colorado. That's a pretty cool little road trip. And for me, in the fast-paced world that we're living in, to just drive something that dictates my pace and tells me how fast to go, I like that.
And I know the answer to this one. The best camera for every day.
The best camera for every day is that camera you carry in your pocket, and that's the one that's attached to your phone. And I've got to say, I shot thousands and thousands of rolls of Kodachrome in my day of still photography, and what I can do on my phone is so far advanced to anything I could do in my professional life of still photography. And so I love it, and the spontaneity and the ability to capture things, and also plays out the amount of times I'm inspired by other people posting pictures at the same events I was at and seeing that they saw something differently than I did. I think those kind of things are really pretty cool because I'm a racer, I'm a competitor. And when I see somebody shooting something better than I got at an event, I want to up my game too. So it still motivates me when I see other people's work.
Perfect. Jeff, we could talk for hours. One day we will. Thank you so much. Enjoy the race this weekend at Austin. I think it's going to be we're going to see a lot going on, aren't we?
Absolutely. And we are definitely in a golden era, and shows like yours to provide background for these great events. All this is just such a mega time to be in, and to be in the sport that is giving back so much at this point, and being able to explore it and experience it. It's really fun. I'm enjoying it.
Perfect. Us too. Thanks a lot, Jeff. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Hey, race fans. Justin Bell here. Well, if you're anything like me, driving probably means quite a lot to you, and not just racing, all driving. Nowadays, I'm sure you feel like I do sometimes. I'm just too distracted with texts and emails, work calls, social media to get out there and simply enjoy the open road. Well, I've always had a love for driving, and that is what Mobil 1 is all about. A reminder that even when life starts to feel too full of screens and routines, the ultimate escape is waiting patiently in your driveway. Mobil 1, for the love of driving. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jeff. He is a truly impressive man, and every time I talk to him, I want to raise my own game, which is a good thing because it needs raising sometimes. Austin Formula One this weekend. I actually went to the inaugural race back in 2012 because I was so excited that we had a permanent, dedicated Formula One track, new track built just outside Austin, Texas. The buzz was enormous. The infrastructure was freshly, basically baked. And there was a lot of environmental and political reasons that the track wasn't going to get built. When it was outstanding. And, just give context, that first race, they had such great fan attendance. People really were drawn to get into the Formula One sphere. 117,492 fans turned up, which felt to me like it was at capacity. It was wild. But to show how big Formula One has become, how extraordinary the pull of Drive to Survive, when the 2022 gates closed, they had a record 440,000 fans pass through the gates over the course of the weekend. So if that isn't a barometer on the success of Formula One in America, then nothing else is. The track is spectacular. I mean, is it? Some people don't like it, some people do. For me, driving it, I enjoyed the vast expanse of tarmac that you could mess up on and kind of come back, rejoin the track. But it is fast, and it is representative of the way modern day racetracks are built. Huge runoff areas, a lot of safety zones, very fast corners. And the inspiration for the track really came from some of the best corners at some of the best racetracks around the world. Silverstone through the Beckett's Copse sequence. Then you had Hockenheim. They took a couple of corners from that. And okay, some of them are the wrong way around. But what they've done is really design, in their opinion, the ultimate driver's track. And we've seen some fine racing. For me, the visual impact of that start line acceleration off the line up 11% grade to the first corner, it has caused for some amazing overtakes, because actually pole position really isn't the prime spot to be in. Often second place is, and I think you're going to see that because you can kind of come around the outside. But braking uphill, of course, allows for the dynamics of the car. You can brake that much later. It's just a stunning racetrack. So I think we're going to see some fireworks this weekend, especially with everything that came off the back of the last race and the tension and the way you had, the driver fatigue, everything that was involved in the last race in Qatar. Here you're coming to another racetrack that a lot of the drivers know very well, enormous amount of data. Remember, 2022 was won by Max Verstappen, with Lewis Hamilton second, Charles Leclerc third. Not sure we'll see, not three. I don't think we'll see 3 out of 3 repeating those same positions. It would be interesting to see Hamilton up there. I feel the storylines to look after is that I do think Mercedes really are intending to ruin the McLaren party a little bit. I think that Lewis is in an interesting place right now. He's being usurped a little bit by George Russell. I think he has the burden of the team. I talked about that last week with the show with my father, Derek Bell. I think, he has a lot of pressure on him, and to help rise the team up, George Russell doesn't really have to join in that as much. He's young, he's fresh, he can just do what he wants to push. So I'm thinking we're going to see that. I think Lando Norris is going to really be spun up tight to dethrone or derail the Oscar Piastri run ahead of him. He's been faster in qualifying, in practices. He's out. He's been on the podium. He got the first win in the sprint race. And I think it's a very big deal for Lando to reestablish himself as the number one. Of course, it's all collaborative. You've got to, rising tides lifts all boats. Zach Brown wants McLaren back at the top. But Lando, I know he wants to be the guy. So 2 chippy chappies there that are going to be racing it out on track. And Max, newly crowned 3-time world champion, enjoying every moment of that, as he should. You're seeing the elation on his face, but he said something chilling, which was, I have more races to win this year. And I think that's how he's going to approach it, guys. He is free of pressure. God, as if he needs to be any more liberated from pressure, but he'll be pushing himself through to the end. So I think he could win a few more races, couldn't he? But we'll see. He's certainly not going to give them away to anyone. So lots of racing ahead in the States, but everything is gearing us up for Las Vegas. And you know what that means. You're going to be here. You're going to be watching on TV. I think we're going to have record crowds. But it all starts at the Wynn the week before, when we have, on November 11th, the Las Vegas Concours out. I said every week because I'm getting really excited. It's out on the beautiful fairways of the Wynn's golf course, normally not accessible to horrific golfers like me, maybe you too. But you can be here, and it's a very nominal entry fee. You can be around some of the best cars of every generation. I mean, literally, when I look at this for you, we have hypercars. I mean, McLaren's, Bugattis, Koenigsegg's. We have concept and culture cars, and we have EVs. I mean, some of the latest EVs that no one's actually got to see yet. There's a Tour d'Elegance on the Sunday, which will be fantastic. And some really great categories, an unusual take on a concours. And I think you would really enjoy it. So if you are maybe you're not able to come to the Grand Prix, but you should definitely be here and check out the Concours d'Elegance. And that is at lasvegasconcours.com. You can find out a lot more about it. Bring your family. Say you were here. It's going to be big and lots of celebrities. Well, thanks a lot, guys. The next time I talk to you, we will be digesting and dissecting Austin. And I think that we're going to have a lot to talk about. Thanks for watching, guys. Thank you very much to the Wynn for having me. And of course, to Mobil One, because they are for the love of driving. See you next week.